The blue tamper tape was still curled around Nora Hale's wrist when Grant Mercer kicked open the quarantine cage. "Change of plan." He pointed at 18 gray cartons stacked beneath the return's client hold sign. "Clear them as damaged." Outside, an unmarked white van backed toward Dock 4. Nora kept hold of the offline serial reader. "These passed triage." Grant laughed. The receiving crew heard him. "Those boxes are headed to my cousin." He leaned over Nora's terminal and tapped the damage disposition field with one square fingernail. Nora scanned the remaining serials before the courier arrived. The reader chirped on the last box. Then Celia Rusk from Bellwether Grocers walked onto the dock with another auditor and asked, "Why did every unit just move?" Grant's smile held for half a second too long. Celia took the reader from Nora, cut the first blue seal, and scanned every box. Nora watched the serial numbers turn red on Celia's tablet and wondered why Grant had been so certain she would help him. Dock 4 went quiet except for the white van's reverse alarm. Celia's tablet displayed 18 identical warnings. Asset active, disposition not authorized. The courier driver lowered his window. "You loading me or what?" Grant recovered first. He always did. "Wrong staging lane, Dean. Give us 10. The driver made a face that suggested 10 minutes had already been stolen from him somewhere else that morning. He pulled forward and killed the alarm. Celia looked at Grant. "You know him?" "I know most of the local drivers. You called him Dean. It's written on the manifest." There was no manifest. Nora saw Celia notice that too. Grant crouched beside the open carton. Inside, 6 rugged handheld scanners rested in molded foam, their black housings polished from years of grocery aisles and loading bays. One had a cracked yellow trigger. Another still wore a faded Bellwether Produce Department sticker. "Returns get moved all day," Grant said. Nora scanned them from quarantine to damage assessment. The alert language makes it sound dramatic. "I scanned them in place," Nora said. Grant looked up at her. His expression stayed pleasant, but the skin around his eyes tightened. That reader was taken out of service. It's the offline unit, which is out of service. It passed its verification Tuesday. Louise Benton, the dock coordinator, became deeply interested in the plastic wrap on a pallet of receipt paper. Nora could practically hear him deciding where to put his hands. Celia turned the reader over. It was old enough to have a scratch screen and a battery door held shut with a strip of black cloth tape. "Why were you using this?" "The Wi-Fi drops inside the cage." "We've got a ticket open," Grant said. Nora likes workarounds. The second Bellwether auditor, a narrow man named Peter Sloan, scanned the carton label with his phone. "This return authorization closed yesterday." Nora nodded. "Quarterly audit cleanup. Store 184 sent 9 units, but the portal listed 8. I held the shipment until Bellwether corrected the count. And the correction came through? At 6:12 this morning." Grant stood. "Which is why we were staging them." "For your cousin?" Celia asked. Louise coughed into his fist. Grant gave Nora the smallest possible glance. It landed like a thumb pressing a bruise. "Wade Mercer owns Northline Recovery. They buy approved scrap from us. I made a joke that apparently didn't travel." "Nothing's been approved as scrap," Peter said. "It hadn't been entered yet." "You told her to enter it." "Yes, that's how entering works." Nora felt heat climb her throat. Grant had trained half the managers in the building. He could turn procedure into a private language, then make anyone questioning him sound as if they had missed the first lesson. Celia lifted the scanner with the cracked trigger. A strip of Nora's blue tape clung to its return bag, initialed NH, with the time beneath it. "Did this fail testing?" "No," Nora said. Grant answered at the same time, intermittently. Celia looked between them. Nora said, "It read 500 test codes without a drop. The trigger cap needs replacement. Parts cost is $11. Grant's pleasant expression finally went away. "Nora, stop." The 2 words were soft. That made them worse. She had heard him use that voice on drivers padding wait times and vendors trying to substitute cheaper batteries. Usually it meant he had already found the weak point in their argument. Usually she admired it. Celia placed the unit back into the foam. Seal the cage. These cartons do not move until we reconcile them against our ledger. We have outbound freight stacked behind them, Grant said. Move the freight. Your team approved this layout. Then my team can watch you change it. Peter began photographing the cartons. The little shutter sound on his phone repeated down the row. Nora reached for the roll of blue tape on her belt. Grant took it from her hand. I'll handle it, he said. The receiving crew was watching now. Tasha at intake. Ramon by the battery bench. Luis pretending not to. Even Dean in the van had turned sideways in his seat. Grant pulled a length of tape and sealed the first carton with more force than necessary. The tape stretched, making the printed void marks pale. You need to log the roll number, Nora said. His head turned. It's required for a reseal. I know the procedure. The number's inside the core. A faint laugh escaped someone near the receipt paper pallet. Grant looked that way and the sound died. He peeled the tape back, checked the core, and wrote the lot number on Celia's custody sheet. When he handed the roll to Nora, his fingers closed around it for an extra beat. Conference room, he said. Now. The conference room had a glass wall facing the repair floor and a table permanently marked by rings from hot coffee. Grant closed the blinds one slat at a time. He liked the building to watch him close doors. Nora sat across from him. Her wrist still had a blue curl of tape around it. She removed it and wound it around 2 fingers. Grant placed both palms on the table. Tell me what you thought you were doing. My job. That answer is beneath you. You asked me to falsify a disposition. I asked you to process inventory as damaged, because that was the destination code available. For units that weren't damaged, repairable and damaged are not opposites. They are when one means client review and one means release to salvage. Grant pulled out the chair opposite her but didn't sit. You know how long Bellwether takes to authorize repair on anything under $40. We warehouse units worth $300 because they need a $12 trigger. Then they complain our cycle time is bloated. So you send them to Wade? I move dead stock through an approved recovery vendor. You said your cousin. He is my cousin. He also employs 32 people and runs the cleanest refurbishment line in the county. The pride in his voice was real. That unsettled her more than a denial would have. Bellwether still owns those units. Bellwether owns thousands of units it can't locate. And Celia just located these. He finally sat. Do you have any idea what happens if they freeze the recovery lane? We miss our margin target. Corporate consolidates this depot into Ashland. 76 people get a commute they can't make, or severance that lasts 6 weeks. You could have told me there was an authorized transfer. I did tell you. No. You told me what code to use. Because I expected you to understand the larger operation. Nora looked down at the tape around her fingers. The blue had darkened where it overlapped. 3 years earlier, Grant had found her crying in the women's restroom after her former partner emptied their joint account and left a spreadsheet explaining which household bills were now hers. Grant never mentioned the tears. He moved her onto enough weekend inventory work to cover the mortgage, then made sure the overtime was approved before payroll closed. He had never asked to be thanked. Now he leaned back and said, Your promotion review is next month. There it was, placed gently between them. Nora unwound the tape. Is that why you thought I'd do it? His jaw shifted. You made sure everyone heard, she said. You stood me at that terminal and told me to call good equipment damaged. Was I supposed to be grateful you let me type it myself? You're turning an operational disagreement into theater. You opened the cage because the cartons needed to move. To your cousin. Lower your voice. The blinds trembled with the air conditioning. Nora lowered it. Did Wade know they belonged to Bellwether? Grant studied her as if she had just moved into a category he disliked. "Go home," he said. "My shift ends at 4. It ends now." "Am I suspended?" "You are being removed from the floor while I investigate why you used an out-of-service device to trigger a client escalation. The device isn't out of service. Bring me the verification record. It's in the equipment binder." I checked. It isn't. For a moment, the room seemed to tip beneath her. She had clipped the signed verification sheet into the yellow equipment binder herself on Tuesday afternoon. Luis had complained that the reader's beeper could wake the dead. Tasha had drawn a tiny gravestone next to the battery result. Nora could see the page in her mind. Grant saw that she could see it. "Badge," he said. She unhooked it from her belt and set it on the table. Grant's hand moved toward it, then stopped. "I have protected you here." "I know. You think Celia Rusk is going to remember your courage when Ashland absorbs this place?" "I think she'll remember the cereals." Something in his face closed. He picked up her badge. "HR will contact you." On the repair floor, the blinds made the conference room glass look black. Tasha watched Nora collect her purse from beneath the returns desk. Ramon avoided looking at her. Luis came over holding a roll of stretch wrap as if he needed a reason to be there. "You okay?" he asked. "No." He nodded, relieved by the simplicity of the answer. "The verification sheet is gone," Nora said. His grip tightened on the cardboard tube. "Maybe it got filed wrong." "You watched me file it." Luis glanced at the conference room. "I watch a lot of things," he said. "Apparently. That's not fair." "No, it's accurate." His face hardened, then softened almost immediately. Luis had the unfortunate habit of showing every revision of his feelings. "Grant kept this dock open during the acquisition," he said quietly. "You remember what the consultants wanted." "I remember." "He got my attendance write-up cleared when my back went out." "I remember that, too." "He's not stupid enough to steal client inventory." "I didn't say he was stupid." The white van was gone. The 18 cartons remained in the cage, each one crossed with blue tape. Peter photographed the seal on the last box while Celia wrote in her custody log. Nora slipped on her coat. Celia approached without smiling. "I can't discuss an active reconciliation with depot personnel. I'm going home." "That's probably best. Did the scan upload?" Celia's eyes moved toward Grant's office. "The reader was online long enough to create the movement alerts." "That isn't what I asked." "No." Nora waited. Celia adjusted the strap of her laptop bag. "Offline cues sync to Bellwether's asset system in batches. Once received, the raw event data is retained under our audit policy." "How long?" "I can't discuss that with depot personnel." "Of course." 7 years, Celia said, and walked back to the cage. In the parking lot, Nora sat in her car with the engine off. July heat pressed through the windshield. Her mortgage payment was scheduled for Friday, and the promotion raise had already been assigned 3 different jobs in her checking account notebook. Her phone buzzed once. Grant had sent a formal notice to her personal email. Administrative suspension pending review of unauthorized equipment use, client disruption, and possible chain of custody breach. A second email arrived before she finished reading the first. It was from the depot's automated maintenance system. Offline Reader 3. Verification status changed from passed to retired. Changed by GMERCER at 10:42 a.m. Nora took a screenshot. Then another, including the time on her phone. Across the lot, through the open dock door, she could see Luis pull the yellow equipment binder from the shelf. He looked toward the parking lot, found her car, and held the binder against his chest. Grant stepped onto the dock behind him. Luis put the binder back. Nora started the engine. The air conditioning blew hot for several seconds before turning cool. Around 2 fingers of her left hand, the discarded strip of blue tape had left a tacky line. She rubbed at it with her thumb. It did not come off. By the time Nora reached home, the blue line around her fingers had gathered lint from her steering wheel. She stood at the kitchen sink, rubbing it with cooking oil, while her laptop loaded Grant's suspension notice. The house was silent except for the refrigerator cycling on and the soft metallic knock in the pipes that had started in May. Her former partner used to call it the ghost plumber. Now it was simply another thing Nora needed to pay someone to fix. She dried her hands, opened a blank document, and wrote down the morning in order. 6:12, bellwether correction received. 6:19, cartons released from count hold. 6:31, grant ordered damage disposition. 6:34, unmarked courier arrived. She stopped at 6:38. That was when Celia had walked in. The exact minute was easy because the reader had chirped, and Nora had looked at the clock above the battery bench with the stupid private satisfaction of finishing before the auditors arrived. She attached the screenshots showing that offline reader 3 had passed verification, then had been retired by Grant after her suspension. She did not write liar, theft, or cousin. She described what she had seen and what she had been told. At the bottom, she requested preservation of the raw scan queue, maintenance history, camera footage, disposition entries, and dock appointment records. Before sending it to HR, she read it aloud. The facts sounded colder than the kitchen. They also sounded harder to move. HR scheduled her for a video meeting the next morning. Denise Cole appeared from a home office decorated with framed travel prints. Grant joined from the conference room at the depot. Behind his head, the blinds were open. Administrative suspension remains paid while we review, Denise said. Nora, this is not a disciplinary finding. Then why is my system access disabled? Standard precaution. Grant folded his arms. My access is active because I'm responsible for the operation. Thank you, Denise said in the weary tone of someone placing a lid on a pot. She asked Nora to explain why she'd used the offline reader. Nora did. She asked Grant why he had retired it. It was producing false movement events. After it produced the events? Nora asked. Denise raised one finger. You'll each have a chance. Grant described the cartons as candidates for recovery evaluation. Northline, he said, had been invited to inspect them before a formal salvage offer. He had used the damage code as a temporary staging category because Bellwether's portal lacked a pending evaluation option. Nora watched him build the explanation in clean, load-bearing sentences. And Northline is owned by your cousin? Denise asked. Yes, which has been disclosed annually. That surprised Nora. Grant saw it. Related party vendors are permitted with regional approval, he said. Was this transfer approved by Bellwether? Nora asked. It wasn't a transfer. There was a van at the dock. There are often vans at loading docks. You told me the boxes were headed to Wade. I told you Northline was handling them. You chose to make that relationship sound improper in front of a client. Denise glanced down, likely at Nora's email. Grant, was there a written appointment for Northline's inspection? The dock log will show it. Handwritten or electronic? His pause was small. Dock log. Nora wrote that down. Denise noticed. You don't need to take minutes. We'll circulate a summary. I remember better when I write. I remember that about you, Grant said. He made it sound affectionate. Nora's pen pressed a dot through the paper. The meeting ended with instructions not to contact Bellwether directly and not to discuss the review with depot employees. Denise promised an update within 3 business days. It came late on the 4th. Nora was permitted to return under a temporary assignment to freight claims. Her quarantine access would remain suspended. Her quarterly performance bonus was being withheld until Bellwether completed its reconciliation. The letter called this an operational safeguard. Her checking account notebook called it $2,800. Grant was waiting at the security desk when she returned Monday morning. He gave her badge back with the quarantine stripe covered by a white access control sticker. "Welcome back," he said. "Thank you. I mean that." She clipped the badge to her belt. "Then take the sticker off." His mouth twitched. "Claims desk is through receiving. I know where it is. I had facilities clean it up. That meant someone had removed the broken chair. The claims desk occupied a narrow room between receiving and the parts cage. It had no windows, no air conditioning vent, and one wall painted the yellow-beige color of old masking tape. 3 plastic bins waited on the desk, each packed with tangled charging cords from freight damage claims. Taped to the monitor was a note in Grant's handwriting. Count by connector type. Photos required. Below that, Tasha had added in purple ink the USB-C ones byte. Nora smiled before she could stop herself. She spent the morning separating cords, photographing crushed cartons, and entering carrier claim numbers. The work mattered. Freight losses cost the depot money. Grant had chosen it because it made her competence look small. At 10, Ramon brought in another bin without meeting her eyes. "More snakes," he said. "Any venomous?" 2 lightning cables and a printer cord that smells like soup. Chicken or tomato, he considered. Industrial. When he left, Nora found a paper cup of coffee tucked behind the bin. 1 cream, no sugar. There was no note. She drank it cold an hour later. Claims access gave her a narrow slice of the depot system. She could not see serial-level return histories, but she could open carrier invoices, damage photographs, and supporting documents tied to freight reimbursements. At first, the records were ordinary. Crushed corners, pierced shrink wrap, pallets tilted like exhausted wedding cakes. Then a photograph from 8 months earlier stopped her. The claim concerned 2 cartons supposedly damaged beyond use during a transfer from the depot to Northline Recovery. The picture showed water staining along the bottom edges. Across the top seams ran blue tamper tape, initialed NH. Nora enlarged the image. She remembered sealing those cartons. They had held 24 bellwether charging cradles returned from a store remodel. Grant had later said the client authorized destruction after moisture exposure. The tape showed no water damage. More importantly, the printed lot marks repeated at the exact interval used by roll B114. Nora had opened that roll on a Thursday morning and closed it in the seal log 9 days later. She searched claims by Northline. 14 results appeared. Some were legitimate cracked pallets and 1 memorable forklift puncture that had skewered an entire box of belt clips. Others had photographs of clean cartons crossed with Nora's tape, followed by claim notes saying the contents had been discarded before inspection. All 14 claims listed Grant as approving manager. That alone proved little. Grant approved most outbound loss claims, but the pickup documentation looked different from other vendors. Mainline Disposal had portal appointments with driver IDs and gate timestamps. Northline had scanned copies of handwritten doc sheets. Nora opened the oldest one, authorized by LBENTON. She sat back. Luis's credentials appeared on 6 Saturday releases, including 2 dates when Nora knew he had been off. One had been the weekend of his back injury, when he could barely stand long enough to microwave lunch. Her cursor hovered over the print icon. The employee policy allowed printing claim support for processing. It did not allow taking records home. She printed the claim packets, stapled each one, and placed them in the locked drawer assigned to her desk. Then she created a work note requesting carrier weight verification. At lunch, Luis found her beside the vending machines. "You're printing old Northline files," he said. "That traveled fast." "The printer is outside my office." Then it barely had to travel. He shoved his hands into his pockets. "Grant asked what you were doing." "What did you tell him?" "That I didn't know." "That's becoming your specialty." His jaw tightened. "You think I'm enjoying this?" "No, I think you're trying to survive it." "And you aren't?" Nora fed $2 into the vending machine. The machine accepted the bills, hummed, and failed to release her pretzels. Luis slapped the glass with the heel of his hand. The bag dropped. "Still good for something," he said. She picked it up. "Were you here on March 9th? He stared at the vending machine. "Luis." "No." "Your credentials released a Northline pickup." Grant covered some Saturdays. "With your login?" "We shared the dock station sometimes." "You shared passwords?" "It wasn't like that." "What was it like?" He'd call from his office and say the system locked him out. I'd sign in so the drivers didn't sit. If they sat, we got detention charges. Then I stopped thinking about it. Did you see what they picked up? Wrapped pallets, cartons, same as anybody. With blue seals? His eyes flicked toward her hands. I don't know. You do. I didn't open them. That isn't what I asked. Luis stepped closer and lowered his voice. You want me to say I helped steal things? Is that what makes your case clean? My case? That's what everyone's calling it. Everyone? Grant says Bellwether might pull half the volume because you made a routine recovery inspection look like diversion. Nora crushed the pretzel bag slightly in her fist. Do you believe him? I believe 76 people work here. So does he. Luis looked hurt, which irritated her more than anger would have. I can't help you, he said. You already did. His face changed. Those Saturday dates, Nora said. If you weren't here, the camera logs will show it. Cameras overwrite after 90 days. She hadn't known that. Luis realized his mistake and looked away. Doc schedules don't, she said. He walked back toward receiving without answering. By mid-afternoon, Nora's claims access changed. The search box vanished while she was using it. A message appeared. Role permissions updated. Grant came to the doorway 10 minutes later. How are the cords? Separated by connector type. Photos? Attached? Good. You've always been thorough. So I'm told. He leaned against the frame. Denise says your restriction doesn't prevent normal claims work. It does prevent historical research unrelated to your assignment. The Northline claims were in my queue. You searched them. I'm checking carrier weights. Why? Because a disposal carton listed as empty left here at 322 pounds. Grant's eyes sharpened. Packaging weight. For an empty carton? Pallet, corner board, wrap. 300 pounds of corner board? You're not a freight engineer. No, I count what's in boxes. He came into the room and closed the door behind him. The beige walls made him look larger. Grant had the kind of build that suggested he still owned a gym membership he used just often enough to mention honestly. Bellwether froze the recovery lane, he said. We now have 600 units occupying paid floor space. Repair benches are waiting on disposition. The client is talking about moving returns to Ashland until the reconciliation is finished. I didn't falsify their inventory. You created the incident. The boxes created the incident. That sounds clever, but it won't keep people employed. Nora held his gaze. Grant pulled out the chair opposite her and sat. I can end your suspension review. I'm back at work. You're in a closet counting cords. You picked the closet. I can restore your regular assignment. I can recommend release of your bonus. In exchange for what? A factual statement. You were concerned about Northline because of my family connection. You used the offline reader to document that concern. You didn't understand the recovery inspection had not yet become a transfer. The client alerts were unintended. That isn't factual. Most of it came out of your own mouth. Not in that order. He gave a tired smile. Order is what adults negotiate. Nora thought of the timetable in her kitchen. Exact minutes. Exact sequence. You changed the reader status after you sent me home because you demonstrated it wasn't reliable. It recorded 18 correct serials. It reported movement when none occurred. I moved through the queue. That's one interpretation. It's how the software works. Grant leaned forward. Listen to me. Wade is not some man with bolt cutters and a warehouse full of stolen televisions. He has compliance certificates, downstream buyer records, environmental permits. I built that vendor relationship because corporates approved salvagers were charging us to destroy equipment that still had value. Value that belonged to Bellwether. Value they routinely abandoned. Did they abandon those 18 cartons? His silence lasted one breath. Sign the statement, he said. Come back to returns. We fix the process. Everybody keeps moving. And if I don't, you keep counting cords until Denise decides whether insubordination fits inside your job description. He left the statement on her desk. The first paragraph called the scan an impulsive act arising from a personal concern. Nora read it twice. Then she folded it into thirds and placed it in the same locked drawer as the Northline claims. The next morning, the blue seal rolls disappeared from every station. Clear security tape replaced them, unnumbered and brittle. A typed notice said the change was part of a cost reduction trial. Grant also moved Northline pickups to the far overflow dock, beyond the view from Nora's claims room. At 11, she carried a bin of documented cables to receiving and found a man in a green Northline polo standing beside Grant. He had Grant's broad shoulders and none of his restraint. His beard was trimmed sharply enough to look drawn on. Grant stopped speaking when Nora approached. The man looked at her badge, then at her face. "So that's Nora," he said. "Not who are you, not nice to meet you." Grant's expression warned him too late. Wade smiled and held out his hand. "I've heard you're very good with numbers." Nora looked at the hand without taking it. Behind Wade, 3 clean cartons sat on a Northline pallet. The tape across their seams was clear, but beneath it, caught in the cardboard fibers, were narrow blue shreds printed with half of a lot number. Nora raised her eyes to Grant. "I'm better with boxes," she said. Wade's hand remained between them for another second before he lowered it. "Boxes," he said. "Fair enough." Grant stepped around the pallet. "Nora, these aren't part of your assignment. They're in receiving. They're outbound packaging." The nearest carton had a fresh label reading "empty return material." Nora put her bin of cables down and pressed one finger against the clear tape. It lifted from the cardboard with almost no resistance. Under it, the blue fibers formed 2 letters. One was H. The other might have been the left side of an N. Wade watched her. "Problem with the seal?" "Depends who opened it." Grant's voice sharpened. "Nobody opened it. The original tape tore during handling. Then it needs a compromised package hold. It's empty." Nora looked at the pallet scale beside the dock. "Easy to confirm." Wade glanced at Grant. It was quick, but it was the first time Nora saw uncertainty pass between them. Grant folded his arms. "Go ahead." Luis rolled the pallet onto the scale. The digital numbers climbed, settled, and blinked. 286.4 pounds. Wade gave a small whistle. "Those are some heavy, empty boxes. They contain foam inserts," Grant said. "Then the label's wrong," Nora said. She pulled a red freight claim tag from the dispenser and looped it through the pallet wrap. Her claims assignment authorized her to hold any outbound package with disputed contents or damaged custody seals. Grant had written that procedure himself after a carrier lost 12 scanner batteries and tried to blame the depot. Wade rubbed his beard. "We can take it back off your hands." "It isn't leaving until it's inspected," Nora said. Grant stepped close enough that only she could hear him. "You're enjoying this?" "No." That seemed to bother him more. Tasha brought a utility knife and cut the wrap. Grant insisted on opening the cartons himself. The first held foam inserts, as promised, but beneath them were charging cradles bundled in anti-static sleeves. The second contained pistol grip handles and replacement trigger assemblies. The third held 8 complete scanners with their manufacturer labels scraped away, not cleanly scraped. Silver serial stickers still clung in narrow strips around recessed screw holes. Luis exhaled through his nose. Wade bent over the box. "This isn't what I was told was on that pallet." "What were you told?" Nora asked. "Reusable packing material and harvested plastics." Grant cut in. "The warehouse team loaded the wrong returns." "Which warehouse team?" Nora asked. "Our overflow operation." "We have an overflow operation?" "It's temporary." Wade straightened. "Grant." "Not here." "Then where?" Grant looked at Nora, Luis, Tasha, and Ramon, who had drifted over from the battery bench holding a screwdriver he had forgotten to put down. "My office," Grant said. He and Wade walked away together. Wade's shoulders moved when he talked. Grant's didn't. Nora removed one of the scanners by its rubberized handle. The serial recess had been gouged with something flat and sharp. In the battery compartment, however, a smaller service label remained intact. "Don't power it on," Luis said. "I wasn't going to." You were thinking about it. I think about lots of things. Tasha leaned over the box. That's a bellwether configuration sticker. Nora looked at her. Tasha swallowed. Green corner. They're the only client with green. Take receiving photographs, Nora said. All sides. Pallet label, seal remnants, contents. Grant's office door closed across the floor. Louise stared after him. He said empty packaging. He did, Nora said. You think Wade didn't know? I think Wade didn't know about this pallet. That's not the same answer. No. Louise looked tired. You do that on purpose. What? Leave the hard part sitting there. It usually is. By lunch, the pallet had been moved into the locked freight claim bay. Nora logged the weight and compromised seals, then attached the photographs. When she tried to add the surviving service label numbers, the system rejected them because her role lacked serialized inventory permission. She saved them in the claim notes as visible markings. At 1:15, Denise called her into the conference room. Grant was already seated. Wade was gone. You've exceeded the scope of your temporary assignment, Denise said. Nora placed the claims procedure on the table. I followed the hold requirement. For a pallet, your site manager had already released. The label said empty. It weighed 286 pounds. Grant tapped a pen against his notebook, which is why I allowed her to inspect it. Allowed? I could have overridden the hold and exposed complete scanners under a false label. Mispacked scanners, with serial labels removed. Denise looked at Grant. Why were they removed? Northline harvests housings. Labels are removed during parts sorting. At our depot, Nora asked. At Overflow. Where is Overflow? Grant's pen stopped tapping. Commerce Drive. Nora knew Commerce Drive. It was a row of low warehouses near the freight bypass, the kind with fading unit numbers and weeds growing through the truck apron. Is it a company facility? Denise asked. Northline subleases us space during volume spikes. Was that disclosed in the related party review? The space arrangement is new. How new? 7 weeks. Denise closed her eyes briefly. Grant turned to Nora. You see conspiracy in normal sloppiness because you've decided I'm your enemy. You hid client units under packing foam. I didn't pack the cartons. You released them, based on a warehouse manifest. Handwritten? His face tightened. Denise placed both hands flat on the table. The pallet stays on hold. Nora, return to claims. Grant, send me the Commerce Drive agreement and inventory list by end of day. Outside the conference room, Tasha was waiting with 2 cups of coffee. I don't need coffee, Nora said. It isn't for you, I'm nervous. You're double-fisting caffeine because you're nervous. 1 is decaf. That's just brown water. Tasha followed her into claims and shut the door. I found the dead reader picture. Nora turned. When we verified offline 3, remember I drew the gravestone? Louise said the beeper could wake the dead, so I sent a picture to the returns chat. The chat thread appeared on Tasha's phone. There was the yellow equipment binder page, signed by Nora and Tasha, with every test result marked passed. In the margin, the tiny gravestone said, R.I.P. everyone's ears. The timestamp was Tuesday, 2:14 p.m. Send it to Denise, Nora said. Tasha's thumb hovered. Grant will know it came from me. Yes. He does my schedule. Yes. You could send it. He'll still know. Tasha stared at the picture. You're not very comforting. I don't want to lie to you. Could you lie a little? Like recreationally? Nora almost smiled. You don't have to send it. That's worse. I mean it. Tasha looked toward the door. He gave me full-time hours when the acquisition froze hiring. He remembers people's coffee. He got Ramon's tool allowance approved after corporate said no. That's what makes this feel disgusting. Nora understood. Grant never spent kindness carelessly. He invested it where it would earn loyalty later. Tasha sent the picture to Denise and copied Nora. There, she said, I feel brave and nauseous. That's usually the combination. At 3, Tasha's next month's schedule appeared in the shared calendar. Her preferred early shift was gone. She had been moved to closing intake. Nora printed the schedule change and added it to her HR file. The original verification sheet reappeared in the yellow binder the following morning. Its pass box had been crossed out. Retired was written over it in black ink. Grant told Denise he had found it misfiled behind the battery service pages and updated it to reflect his maintenance decision. The photograph proved the sheet had existed, but not who removed it or when. The system screenshots proved Grant changed the electronic status after Nora's suspension, something he had never denied. Each fact landed. None finished the argument. Bellwether sent a formal demand for a 2-year reconciliation of returned assets touched by Northline. Grant assigned the work to a regional analyst in Ashland and excluded Nora for independence. The analyst produced a summary showing that Northline had received only approved salvage. Nora read it at her claims desk and noticed the summary counted transactions, not units. A pallet of 6 scanners and a pallet of 60 appeared as one transfer each. She wrote a response through HR requesting serial-level reconciliation. Grant denied the request as excessively burdensome. That afternoon, the payment on Nora's house cleared and left $63 in her checking account. She sat in her car during lunch and moved the electric bill to the following week. A late fee was cheaper than an overdraft. She hated how quickly principal became arithmetic. When she returned, Luis was waiting inside the claims room. He closed the door but remained standing. "I wasn't at the depot on those Saturdays," he said. "I know." "No, you suspect, I'm telling you." Nora set down her purse. "Grant knew my password because I wrote it under the dock keyboard during the acquisition. We were processing trailers faster than IT could make accounts. He told me to change it later. I did, but then he'd ask me to log in before I left on Fridays so his weekend crews could see appointments." "Did you know Northline was picking up?" "Sometimes. He said they were getting scrap out before Monday receiving." "Did you see complete units?" "I saw sealed boxes." "Blue tape?" "Yes." Nora waited. Luis rubbed both hands over his face. "Wade's drivers didn't use the main gate after a while. They came through overflow. Grant said it saved detention fees." "When?" "About a year ago, maybe longer." "Would you put that in writing?" His hands dropped. "That's why I'm here." She handed him a blank sheet from the printer. He didn't take it. "You already have the answer ready for everything." "No, I keep paper. If I do this, he'll say I broke password policy. You did. And you're fine with that?" "No, but it's true." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "You really are terrible at comforting people." "So I've heard." Luis took the paper. He wrote for 20 minutes. His first version used phrases like sometimes and as needed. Nora asked him to add dates he could support from schedules and to separate what he saw from what Grant told him. He crossed out 3 sentences and started again. When he finished, his statement was less dramatic and much stronger. "I want a copy," he said. "You should keep one. And Denise gets the original, not you." "Good." He looked at her locked drawer. "What's in there?" "Claim packets and Grant's statement." "You didn't sign it?" "No." Luis nodded slowly. "He told everyone you were considering it." "Of course he did. He also said the blue tape was discontinued because you failed to control the rolls." That one hurt more than Nora expected. The seal log had been her routine, her insistence, her name across every seam. Grant had turned it into evidence of her carelessness. "Did everyone believe him?" she asked. "Enough people wanted to." Luis left with his statement. At 4:30, Denise asked Nora to remain after shift. Celia and Peter were in the conference room with Grant, along with a regional operations director Nora knew only from quarterly calls. Celia pushed the Ashland summary across the table. "This does not answer our request." "It accounts for every authorized transfer," Grant said. "It accounts for pallets. Pallets were the contracted billing unit. Our assets are serialized. The historical effort would disrupt live operations." Celia looked at Nora. "Can your depot reconstruct serial custody from the records you maintain?" Grant answered. "Not reliably." "Yes," Nora said. The room shifted. Grant's voice stayed level. "You no longer maintain those records." The return photos show seals and carton labels. Freight weights show whether shipments called empty actually carried stock. The offline scan queue gives timestamps. Bellwether's ledger identifies units that never received disposal approval. That still doesn't prove where any unit went. Then inspect Commerce Drive. The regional director frowned. "What is Commerce Drive?" Grant looked at Denise. There it was, the limit of what he had disclosed. Nora placed both hands on the table so no one could see them tremble. "I'll participate in a supervised reconciliation if my serial access is restored. The raw logs are preserved, and every carton at Northline and Commerce Drive is held until Bellwether can scan it." Grant leaned back. For the first time, he looked relieved. Nora understood why a moment later. He believed the labels were already gone. "Fine," he said. "Let's end this." The regional director, Marlene Shaw, looked from Grant to Nora. "Serial access is restored for this reconciliation only," she said. "Bellwether controls the scan file. Denise preserves everything else. No cartons move from either location." Grant nodded. "Agreed." Nora said, "Northline's trucks, too." Wade, who had been summoned back and was now standing near the door, gave her a flat look. "My trucks carry other customers' property. Then those loads can be documented before they leave." That could take all day. Celia closed her laptop. "Then bring coffee." Commerce Drive smelled like wet concrete and hot dust. Northline's subleased unit sat between a commercial laundry supplier and a company that rented portable fencing. The number 14 had fallen off the building, leaving a clean shadow on the brick. Grant arrived first and stood beside the roll-up door with a clipboard. Nora arrived with Denise. Celia and Peter came in a Bellwether fleet car carrying 2 serialized asset readers and a carton of spare batteries. Wade pulled in last. "Coffee," he said, lifting a cardboard carrier. "As ordered." He gave the first cup to Celia, the second to Denise, and kept the third. Grant looked at him. "Nothing for me?" "You've got your clipboard." Inside, pallets filled most of the narrow warehouse. Clear wrap reflected the overhead lights. Some cartons had been flattened and bundled. Others were stacked neatly beneath signs, reading plastics, component harvest, packaging, and client pending. The neatness was Grant's. Wade's Northline facility might have been cleaner, but this room carried Grant's habit of making disorder line up. Marlene joined by video on Denise's laptop. "We'll begin with the inventory list Grant submitted." Peter compared pallet tags against the list, while Nora logged seal condition, carton count, and visible identifiers. Her restored access appeared on a Bellwether tablet under a temporary audit profile. It could search serial histories, but could not alter them. The first 2 pallets held foam inserts and cracked housings. The third held receipt printer docs from another client, properly documented. By the 5th, Grant had relaxed enough to take off his jacket. "This is what I've been trying to explain," he said. "Overflow sorting. Poor labels, yes. A process gap, absolutely. But not diversion." Nora opened a carton marked "harvested plastic." Inside were yellow trigger caps, rubber bumpers, and cracked battery doors. "Actual plastic," Wade said. "You disappointed?" "I like accurate labels." "I'm starting to understand that." His humor had an edge, but he stayed close whenever she opened a box. He was watching the contents as carefully as she was. Pallet 6 had clear tape over old blue fibers. Nora stopped. Grant saw her hand pause. "We know the depot reused cartons." She checked the claim photographs on the tablet. The search results loaded slowly over the warehouse Wi-Fi. The carton's crushed lower corner matched a photograph from a freight claim filed 11 months earlier. So did a diagonal crease beneath the right handle cutout. In the old photograph, blue tape crossed the seam. Nora's initials were visible beside lot number B-114. The claim said the carton and its water-damaged contents had been discarded. Nora turned the screen towards Celia. Peter photographed the old image, then the carton in front of them. Grant barely glanced at it. Reused packaging. Again. Nora cut the clear tape. 12 bellwether charging cradles sat inside, dry and individually bagged. Their serial labels were intact. Celia scanned the first. The reader beeped. Her tablet showed the return history. Received at Nora's depot, inspected as functional, changed to damaged inventory 2 days later, released to Northline, disposal confirmation entered by Grant. The remaining 11 followed the same route. Wade put down his coffee. "Those weren't on the contents sheet," he said. Grant kept his eyes on Celia's tablet. "Your team sorted this warehouse. My team was told the units were released client scrap. You signed the receipts based on your manifests." Celia scanned the carton label itself. Its return authorization appeared, along with Nora's original quarantine entry. One box had led to 12 units. Peter marked it "Bellwether Recovered" and applied a numbered custody seal. Grant looked at Nora. "Your initials are on that carton." "Yes." "You sealed it." "In quarantine." "You handled the contents." "At receiving." "And now you're presenting your own markings as evidence against me." Nora opened the offline event history. "My seal entry is 9:43 on April 18th. Your damage disposition is 7:16 the next morning. Northline's handwritten pickup is 8:05. Luis's credentials appeared as the releasing employee. Beside that entry, Denise had attached his signed statement showing he had not worked that Saturday. Nora said, "My initials establish where the box was before you moved it." Grant's eyes left the tablet. The next carton had no usable exterior label, only clear tape over blue strands. Nora found its old photograph by the seal lot and a crescent-shaped tier near the handhold. The freight claim listed the carton as empty packaging, weighing 314 pounds. Inside were 20 scanners with scraped manufacturer stickers. Grant spread his hands. No serials. Celia removed the battery from the first unit. Beneath it was a recessed service label with a small two-dimensional code. The asset reader caught it. "Active disposition not authorized." Peter scanned the other 19 service labels. 4 units powered on after fresh batteries were installed, and their serials also appeared in the diagnostic menu. 6 had cracked triggers. 3 needed battery contacts. The rest passed a basic startup test on the folding table Wade's staff brought from the office. Each one had been coded as destroyed. Each one had crossed Nora's receiving queue first. They kept opening boxes. Blue fibers connected cartons to return photographs. Tape lot intervals narrowed the dates. Freight weights contradicted claims for empty packaging. Bellwether's ledger supplied the serial histories, while the offline queue supplied the order in which the first 18 units had been scanned before Grant tried to retire the reader. The records did not arrive as one dramatic answer. They stacked, box by box, unit by unit. At noon, Grant asked for a break. Celia shook her head. "We have 37 cartons left. People need lunch." Wade gestured toward an office refrigerator. "I have sandwiches." "You planned for this?" "I run a warehouse, Grant. People eat in warehouses." Wade handed out wrapped sandwiches without asking anyone's preference. Nora received turkey with mustard. Grant refused his. While Peter changed reader batteries, Wade pulled Nora aside near the flattened carton bundle. "I need to know what he told you about Northline. He said you were inspecting approved recovery stock. Today?" "The first day." Wade's mouth flattened. "He told us client abandonment had already been documented. We paid the depot's recovery rate. We logged incoming pallet weights. We issued receipts." "Did you record seals?" "Receiving photos. 4 sides for anything over 5,000 book value. That's competent. I'm glad I finally impressed you. It doesn't make the transfer authorized." "No." He looked across the warehouse at Grant. "It means I can prove how it arrived." Grant was speaking to Denise too far away to hear. His hand moved toward the cartons whenever he emphasized a point, as though the inventory still belonged to his explanation. Wade said, "His report to Marlene says Northline selected the contents without depot supervision. Did you?" "We selected scrap categories. He selected pallets." "He's putting the choice on you." "I can read. You also signed receipts." "I know what I signed." For the first time, Wade looked less like Grant's cousin than a vendor calculating what one bad account might cost him. He went to his truck and returned with a black binder and a tablet. The binder held Northline's receiving sheets. The tablet held time-stamped photographs of pallets arriving with blue seals intact. Wade gave both to Denise. Grant watched him do it. "What is that?" he asked. "Records. You need counsel before you start handing over company files. So do you." "Wade, don't be emotional." Wade's laugh was short. "You sent me a manifest saying, 'Client release confirmed.' Your report this morning says I chose undocumented stock. One of us got emotional when he wrote that." He opened a message thread on the tablet. Grant's pickup instructions included dates, pallet counts, and phrases such as "clear before month close" and "same treatment as prior returns." Another message directed Wade's drivers to use the overflow entrance because the main cage was under client review. Grant looked at Denise. "Those messages require context. They'll receive it," she said. Marlene's voice came from the laptop on the folding table. "Grant, step away from the inventory." He did, slowly. The scan continued without him. At pallet 11, Celia found the 18 cartons from Dock 4. Grant had ordered them moved to Commerce Drive after the first audit hold was released for internal consolidation. Their blue seals had been covered with clear tape, but Nora's original marks remained underneath. Celia scanned every box again. The serial reader sounded 18 times, quick and hard in the concrete room. Each carton opened to units still owned by Bellwether. Each unit carried Nora's triage result and Grant's later damage code. 11 had been tested functional. 5 needed minor parts. 2 needed deeper repair evaluation. None had been approved for salvage. The last scan populated a movement map on Celia's tablet. Bellwether store, depot receiving, quarantine, false damage disposition, Northline overflow. The path ended at Commerce Drive. Celia turned the screen toward Grant. Every unit moved. Grant stared at the map. "The system recorded scans," he said. "It doesn't record intent." "No," Nora said. "Your messages do." He looked at her then, not at Celia or Denise or Wade. For a moment, Nora saw the man who had brought her coffee during inventory weekends, who could glance at a loading plan and spot the single pallet that would trap a trailer door, who had once used 3 phone calls and a favor from a carrier rep to keep the depot open during an ice storm. Then his face changed back. "You think this saves your job?" he asked. "Bellwether freezes us, Ashlyn gets the volume, and you become the woman who proved her own depot couldn't be trusted." Nora felt every person in the warehouse waiting for her answer. She was tired of being made responsible for what Grant threatened to destroy. "You knew those jobs mattered," she said. "That's why you kept putting them between you and the boxes." Denise closed her notebook. "Grant, surrender your badge and company devices. You're on administrative leave pending investigation." He looked at Marlene's face on the laptop. "You're removing the only person who understands this operation." Marlene said, "Your process documents will have to be sufficient." That struck him. Grant had spent years demanding that every workflow be documented so the depot could survive absences, resignations, and acquisitions. He had built the answer to his own threat. He set his badge on the folding table. When he passed Nora, he stopped near enough for her to smell the coffee he had brought for himself. "I protected you," he said. "I know. It was the truth, and it gave him nothing." Grant walked out through the roll-up door. His clipboard remained on a pallet of recovered scanners. Bellwether's reconciliation took 3 more days. Northline returned all identifiable client property, paid freight and audit costs under a negotiated settlement, and lost its approval to receive Bellwether-linked stock. Wade's receiving photographs prevented Grant from placing the entire diversion on him, but they did not erase his decision to accept loosely documented inventory from his cousin. He came to the depot once to collect empty Northline pallets. "You were right about the boxes," he told Nora. "You were right about needing coffee." "That almost sounds friendly." "It isn't." He nodded. "Fair enough." Luis received a final warning for credential sharing. Tasha's early shift returned after Denise compared the schedule change with the timestamp on her email. The blue tape rolls came back too, now stored in a locked cabinet and checked out by lot number. Some employees thanked Nora. Others stopped talking when she entered the break room. Repair volume slowed while Bellwether inspected every pending disposition. Overtime disappeared for 6 weeks. The depot kept the contract, but Bellwether required dual approval for salvage and quarterly outside sampling. Custody and disposition could no longer sit under one manager. Grant's dismissal became official after the investigation matched Northline receipts against false damage entries across 18 months. The same work that had made him valuable made the pattern clear. His freight lanes were efficient. His recovery numbers had looked excellent. He had used both facts to move client property faster than anyone thought to question. Marlene offered Nora the returns manager position on an interim basis. Nora asked for her withheld bonus, the suspension removed from her record, and written authority separating inventory custody from financial disposition. "We can discuss the title after you demonstrate leadership in the interim role," Marlene said. "I demonstrated it at Commerce Drive." The silence on the video call lasted 4 seconds. Nora got the back pay, the corrected record, and the divided authority. She did not get the title. She stayed long enough to rebuild the return queue, train Luis on the new access rules, and make Tasha retire the gravestone drawing from official equipment records. Tasha drew a tiny halo over it instead. Months later, after 2 interviews and a reference check that took longer than promised, Nora accepted a compliance job with a smaller equipment lessor across town. The warehouse handled commercial radios, route tablets, and handheld meters. Its returns cage held 12 cartons instead of hundreds. On her first morning, the receiving clerk showed her a roll of plain brown tape. Nora opened her desk drawer and took out a new roll of blue tamper tape she had ordered through procurement. She logged the lot number, sealed the first returned carton, and wrote NH across the seam. The clerk reached for the box. "Scan first," Nora said. He picked up the reader. The serial appeared in the ledger before the carton moved. Nora pressed the blue tape flat with her thumb.